Why is that absurd, Cenk?
Because here we go again with the neocons, just like they did with the Iraq War. We're going to liberate the Iranians by dropping a bomb on their heads. And once we murder them, they'll love us, and they'll want to get rid of their regime. You can tell all these stories about the regime, and those are true. They're fundamentalists. They're not good guys at all. Saddam was not a good guy. That doesn't mean that we had to invade Iraq and cost ourselves several $1 trillion and over 50,000 Americans dead on behalf of Israel, who at the time called Iraq their #1 enemy, and who had
But that is not what's that is not what's happening.
And in this case, Iran did not attack Israel.
Oh, but
Israel attacked Iran. Stop lying. Stop lying. Israel attacked Iran.
Okay.
Iran did not attack Israel.
I am perfectly happy to say
Israel is the aggressor.
They did through their proxies, Piers. They did through their proxies.
Yeah,
Iran
I don't think they can be
on a daily basis.
I just think when anyone tries to defend
these guys and fund Hamas and Hezbollah. Think like you cannot be this dumb. I understand that you're a propagandist for the regime, but you and I both know
I understand you work
Iran
for Israel,
supports Hamas
but America
and
first didn't want
and
any
multiple
wars.
terrorist organizations. They have no funding without Iran.
When
they
I
don't
hear
have
you
the
guys
weaponry.
describing
without Iran,
Israel's
they
enemies,
attack Israel every day. You know that. You're not that dumb. You're a smart guy.
Sure.
You're a propagandist, but you know that.
Sure. So when I hear you guys describing Israel's enemies, what you're actually doing is projection. You're describing Israel attacking all of their neighbors,
Iran?
killing civilians,
Yes or no?
an aggressive military empire interested in acquisition and wiping out their enemies.
All right.
You know who said from the river to the sea? Benjamin Netanyahu. Who's actually doing from the river to the sea? Benjamin Netanyahu. Who started all the wars? Benjamin Netanyahu. Get out, America, get out of this war. This has nothing to do with us. These guys work for Israel.
Okay, let me bring in Jack,
and the idea that the Iranian people want to be killed, the idea that the Iranian people want to be invaded and bombed is insanity. They do not want that.
No, but I do think a lot of people in Iran, I do think a lot of people in Iran would probably much prefer to have a different kind of ruler than they currently have, who operates such a draconian and repressive regime.
They do not want Israeli rulers.
Okay, well, that's a different question. Let me come to Jack. You've been waiting very patiently. Jack, Cenk mentioned America first and how this is incongruous with America first. Well, at the moment, this appears to be an Israeli operation. They've started this war with Iran. Donald Trump appears to be taking a position of, we don't want to get involved here, making it clear this is not being done with America's obvious physical help. Albeit, I don't think he's too bothered about it happening and probably quite pleased if it does destabilize Iran. But where does this all sit with Donald Trump's America First ideology? Should America, if it comes to it, I mean, if Iran suddenly attacks some American base, for example, should America get involved in this war?
Well, Piers, this is not America's war. This is a war that is confined to two parties in the Middle East. This is a war where the United States absolutely faces the threat of escalation. And as you mentioned, this mission creep and spilling over into the wider footprint of American military that exists throughout the Middle East. And I don't just mean Iraq and Syria. I mean all of the American bases, which are clearly within range of, you mentioned the proxies, you mentioned all these other forces out there. Of course, it strikes the danger of spilling over, not to mention the IRGC has the ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and imagine what that would do to global shipping and oil prices. By the way, they haven't done that. And 10 years ago today, Donald Trump comes down the golden escalator. And what did he say? No more foreign, endless wars. And instead, why don't we focus on the problems at home? He talked about, obviously, illegal aliens. He talked about deportations, but he said trillions of dollars spent in Iraq, trillions spent in Afghanistan. And what did it get for us? Nothing. Dead soldiers, wounded soldiers. We got absolutely nothing out. And you want to talk about destabilization? Well, I think those wars, the massive wars on terror, wars that, by the way, when I was in the United States military, I did participate in, at least in an intelligence capacity. But what did that do to the region? It destabilized it. Syria, completely destabilized right now. Iraq, completely destabilized. And Afghanistan, the Taliban is even in a better position than they were before we got involved, because they have all the U.S. military equipment that we left there. And so every time the U.S. gets involved in one of these things, it actually seems to make the situation much, much worse.
Okay. Let's take a short break to do. It's with the Iranian academic and former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team, Mohammad Morandi. Professor Morandi, thank you for coming back on Uncensored. This is a pretty terrible situation for Iran. It looks like Israel has caught your military napping, caught your leaders napping. They've been asleep, it seems quite literally in some cases, as Israel launched this surprise attack, which has been so far stunningly successful and had comparatively small retaliation from Iran, which suggests that maybe you don't have the capability to do much about what is happening to your country.
Well, first of all, I have to point out some nonsense that your guest said. I fought in the Iran-Iraq war as a volunteer, and I was part of the war effort for 6 years, on and off. I was wounded 4 times, and I survived 2 chemical attacks. There was no children being pushed over minefields. These are myths that Westerners, Western media, Western elites have been promoting for many years in order to demonize Iranians and to portray us as fanatic. Right now, Pierce, your friends, your Zionist allies, they have bombed buildings belonging to the Iranian television. I'm in one of those buildings. And the guard right now is standing outside the door telling me to leave. And I was yelling at him, telling him to go. I'm going to finish this interview. We are not intimidated by you, your government, the United States, or the Israeli regime. This was a blatant act of aggression. People were murdered in Iranian radio and television just minutes ago. And I tweeted it, and your colleagues have seen it. And this building is also a target. Your allies target journalists. Your allies have murdered over 200 journalists, and you are complicit in this genocide.
Well, let me respond to that, Professor.
You repeated the lies.
Listen, I've seen you, Professor. All due respect, Professor.
You are complicit.
All due respect, Professor. I've seen you doing this kind of shtick in the last few days on all sorts of shows, and let me just respond. The reason that I actually think that Israel has a right to do what it is doing with your regime is that your regime has been the fulcrum for terrorism in the Middle East now for decades. Through Hezbollah, through the Houthis, through Hamas, it has done whatever it can do to destabilize the region, to terrorize Israel and anyone else it doesn't like. It's a draconian, oppressive, appalling regime which is deeply unpopular with many Iranians. And every time I've seen you appear in the last few days, you've had a big smirk grin on your face, as if somehow you know better than everybody else, and that somehow we are misinterpreting your rulers and your regime, and that you're all a bunch of really nice people who have nothing but good intentions for the rest of the world, when in fact it's the complete opposite. And finally, Israel has said enough. And they're coming after your nuclear capability because your own ruler, the Ayatollah, has made it clear that he would very much like to see Israel removed from this world. And if you hear that and you're in Israel, then you're going to take action to stop that happening. So that would be my response to you.
Well, if your rant is over, I would point out that you are a dishonest person and a dishonest so-called journalist.
You can do ad hominem stuff as much as you like.
But you were too cowardly. Be quiet for a moment. Be quiet for a moment and let me speak.
You don't tell me how to behave on my own show. If you're going to call me a coward, if you're going to call me a coward and a liar, then I won't be quiet on my own show. Especially not from someone like you who spews disinformation.
I am the one in this building that has been evacuated, and I'm only sitting here because of you. So allow me to speak.
Well, keep the ad hominem attached to yourself then. If you're going to call me a liar and a coward, I'm going to jump in and take you on. So show some respect or don't bother.
You are a coward. You are a coward. You did not come to Iran when I invited you, so you have no right to.
I wouldn't trust going to Iran. Why on earth would I trust going to Iran? As your guest,
your guest said nonsense about.
As your guest in Iran, with your contacts with the Iranian regime.
So don't.
I wouldn't trust that as far as I can throw it.
So don't comment about Iran if you don't come here.
Well, let me give you some facts about your country. Let me give you some facts and see where I'm wrong here. Women face severe restrictions when it comes to marriage, divorce, inheritance, child custody, and so on. Compulsory veiling, punishable by flogging and prison sentences. Women punished for bad dressing, defined as exposing any body parts below the neck. Women banned from certain professions. They can't be judges. They can't be they can't be in certain positions in government. A ban on independent political parties, civil society organizations, trade unions. LGBT people suffer systematic discrimination and violence. Closing shops that have so-called improperly veiled customers. Authorities censor media, jam certain television channels, continue to block or filter mobile apps, social media platforms. Executions, including those of children, torture and other ill treatment are widespread and systematic. State television can often air torture-tainted confessions, arresting and sentencing people who break fast during Ramadan. Anyone who speaks out, protests against the regime, can be subjected to the death penalty, flogging, prison terms and other severe penalties. It doesn't sound like a great place for me to visit, with all due respect, Professor Morandi. So you can tell me that I'm a coward and I'm a liar, and I can tell you that you prop up, personally, you go on the airwaves and you disingenuously prop up and grotesquely defend a terrible regime, which is now getting, as many people see, its final comeuppance for constantly threatening Israel with getting a bomb and taking it out. And that's what this is about. You know it and I know it. And you also know that your regime has propped up the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. It has been the octopus with its tentacles of terrorism spreading all over the Middle East. So you can call me what you like, but what you can't do is deny what I've just said.
You are a coward.
So you keep saying. So you keep saying.
You are a coward.
That's all you can say, isn't it? That's all you've got. It's all you've got. Do one of your smoke grins.
You helped enable genocide in Gaza for 2 months. You don't want to let me talk. You don't want me to talk.
I do, but if all you're going to do is call me a coward and a liar, then why should I keep listening to that? It's pointless. It's what you've been doing on the airwaves for days.
You say not because you say nonsense.
Really? What was nonsense about anything? What was nonsense about anything I said?
Everything. But you just rant on, and you think this way you can convince your audience that while your allies are murdering Iranians, while your allies have murdered
and your regime has been responsible for mass murder. Your regime has been responsible for mass murder.
Let me talk. You are afraid. You are afraid of letting me talk because you know that your narrative is falling apart.
Your narrative is that I'm a coward and a liar. Have you got anything else in your tank? Any other argument other than ad hominem?
Tweets a couple of weeks ago. You won't let me talk. You're afraid of letting me talk. You're afraid.
I'm not afraid of you, Professor Morandi, but you look to me like you're afraid because you know now that the game is up.
Coward,
Iran's terrorism game is up.
I'm in IR. I am in the Iranian radio television building, and it has been emptied because they say they're going to bomb this building. And I stayed here for you. And you are responsible for justifying these criminal acts. And those colleagues of yours in Iran who are true journalists who died today, their blood is on your hand. And
they're not on my hands because I'm not part of the Israeli government or the IDF.
Of Gaza. You are too cowardly to let me talk.
You're just talking nonsense.
You're a coward.
You're talking nonsense.
Won't let me talk.
If I was a coward, I wouldn't have had you on. I wouldn't have had you on if I was a coward. But I knew what you would try and do. You try and do this with all the journalists that you talk to, and I'm afraid it doesn't work anymore. Your shtick doesn't work anymore. You defend the indefensible. You go ad hominem on every host you ever talk to. You were at it yesterday with a Sky News presenter, and I'm not going to take it from you. Sorry, just not going to.
I don't care. You're a genocide enabler. That's what you are.
And you're a terrorism
You have blood on
defender.
your hands.
You're a terrorism
You have
defender.
blood on your hands.
Yeah, you
All
defend a terrorist regime. That's what you do.
All the perfume of Arabia will never clean those hands of yours. Kill. Keep on the killing. Keep on justifying murder. Keep on demonizing Iranians and Palestinians and Lebanese, and keep on killing. Keep on.
I demonize terrorists. What I do is demonize terrorists. And the main
Destroying
fulcrum,
Lebanon and
the main fulcrum
No,
of terrorism,
you are
the
an
main
enabler
terrorism
of terrorism.
for terrorism,
You're an enabler of
which has been
terrorism.
incredibly damaging to
coward.
the people,
You
to
are a
Palestinians,
coward.
to Lebanese, to Iranians, has
You
been
are a
the
coward.
Iranian regime.
You are a coward and an enabler of
Okay,
terrorism.
you've nothing else to say.
Hezbollah was
Professor
created
Morandi,
after the Israeli regime took Lebanon.
Professor Morandi, it's good to end with one of your
Hezbollah was created
good to end with one of
after
your
the Israeli regime.
good to end
in-
with one of your smirks, because they really play
invaded
well with an
Lebanon.
audience, I can tell you. When they see you smirking away, it really is a good look.
You're too cowardly to let me talk.
Yeah.
You're too cowardly.
Because all you've got to
You're too
say,
cowardly.
all you've
You're
got to say
cowardly.
is to attack me. All you care about is attacking me. That's not talking.
You
That's
won't
not
let
an
me
interview.
explain anything.
Yeah.
You won't let me explain anything. You won't let me explain anything.
You don't
won't
want to
let-
explain. You want to just call me a liar and a coward and a genocide
Let me explain
enabler.
that
Have you got
Hezbollah
anything
invaded
else?
after Israel
Anything
invaded
else?
Lebanon and captured the. Yes, you are. You are lying.
Okay.
You are lying about it. Your
All right,
rant was
Professor
all lies
Morandi,
about
it's,
Iran.
thank you for the interview. I wish you a safe there. I do, genuinely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for
I
joining me.
don't think so.